Chapter 1. The Quieting of Night. Part 1. The second letter did not come easily. In point of fact, the second letter did not come at all for several hours, existing instead as a pressure behind the ribs, the kind of persistent, unnameable ache that refuses both articulation and dismissal and turns every other thought into wallpaper. The investments could wait. The question of whether the apartment's ceiling was leaking or merely expressing an opinion about the autumn could wait. Everything could wait, because Kaelen Vaelron had something caught in his throat that was too large to swallow and too honest to spit out, and until he dealt with it, nothing else was going to get done. The first attempt had been flawless. It was, in every technical sense, an excellent letter. It was also, in every human sense, completely full of shit. He read it once, felt the distance in it, that particular hollowness of a room too carefully arranged to be lived in, where every object is positioned and nothing is touched, and the whole space exists for the benefit of someone who will never actually sit down. Without ceremony, he folded it, held it over the candle, and watched the ink blacken and the parchment curl. The wax seal melted last. The formalities always take longest to die. The second letter he wrote standing against the open window, his collar undone, his hair doing whatever it pleased, which was, at present, everything Olinde would have considered evidence of societal collapse. The air of Baldur's Gate pressed inward, carrying the damp breath of the Chiontha and the faint, restless murmur of a city that had seen enough to know it should probably lock its doors, but couldn't quite be bothered. He did not compose it in the way he had been taught. He composed it the way a man composes a thing when the training has failed and the technique has failed, and the only thing left is the embarrassing, inconvenient, structurally unsound truth. He wrote with nothing but his heart.
To Dame Aylin, daughter of the moon. I do not write to you as a lord seeking favor, nor as a warrior presuming upon shared battle to ask what has not been earned, but as a man who has come to understand the limits of his own reach, and refuses, despite that understanding, to accept them quietly. It is about Shadowheart. There is a wound that does not belong to flesh, though it inhabits her body, a mark that does not answer to any healing I have known, though it manifests as pain that would break most within days. It does not fade. It does not weaken. It returns unbidden and without pattern, as though something beyond it continues to remember what the rest of the world has already left behind. She bears it without complaint. There is no bitterness in her, no demand for relief, no plea for intervention. She has accepted it, not as punishment but as fact, and that acceptance more than the pain itself is what I cannot accept in return. I do not ask for a cure. I would not insult you by pretending I believe such things are granted where gods have already placed their claim. But if there exists anything, anywhere, that can lessen its hold, even for a moment, even imperfectly, even at cost, then I would ask if you know of it. If I am wrong to write, then let silence be your answer, and I will not trouble you further. If I am not, then I will come, wherever I must.
The Selûnite shrine near the docks was the kind of place that only exists if you already know it's there. Not hidden, not warded, simply overlooked in the way that certain truths are overlooked, not because they are small, but because they are inconvenient, and the eye slides past them the way water slides past a stone. The entrance was an arch between two warehouses, the crescent above it tarnished to the color of old teeth, and the interior smelled of incense and river water and the particular indefinable quality of things that have been prayed over for so long that the prayers have become part of the architecture. The priestess did not rise when Kaelen entered. She did not greet him. She did not acknowledge his family name, his bearing, or the fact that his boots alone were worth more than the shrine's annual candle budget. She continued praying with the unhurried focus of a woman who had made her priorities clear to the gods decades ago and saw no reason to revisit them for the sake of a nobleman having a crisis at 9:30 in the morning. He found he preferred it that way. There was something restful about being unremarkable.
You have come with something you cannot carry alone,
she said at last, without turning, in the sort of tone that did not seek to impress and therefore arrived with its full weight intact. The way a stone arrives at the bottom of a well, not because it tried, but because it is a stone. He offered the letter. She studied it. Then she studied him, the shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the particular expression of a man who has not slept because sleeping would require him to stop thinking about the thing he cannot stop thinking about. And something in her face suggested she had seen this before, many times. Perhaps too many to be surprised, but not yet enough to stop caring.
This will not travel by horse,
She said, taking the parchment between her fingers.
nor by any messenger who can be paid or persuaded.
I know.
It will be placed where it may be found. If she is meant to read it, she will. If not,
Then I will understand.
Kaelen said quietly. The priestess inclined her head, not in agreement, but in the particular way one acknowledges a statement that is probably sincere and possibly even true, which are not, in her experience, always the same thing.
come back in 3 nights, or do not. It will not change what is already in motion.
Dame Aylin came on the 2nd. He felt her before he saw her, and what he felt was not warmth. The air in the room did not shift. It submitted. A sudden, total rearrangement of atmospheric priority. The entire apartment discovering, instantaneously, that it had a guest it was not remotely equipped to accommodate and adjusting accordingly, the way a pub adjusts when a king walks in. When Kaelen turned, she was already there. Dame Aylin stood in the center of the room, the way she stood in the center of every room, as though the room had been built around her, and she was merely allowing it to continue existing. The celestial cracks in her skin held the candlelight and did something complicated with it, something halfway between radiance and warning, the visual equivalent of a politely raised voice. Her expression was her default expression, which was to say it was the face of a woman who has been immortal for long enough that patience has become less a virtue and more a structural feature, like a load-bearing wall. Behind her, unexpected and grounding in a way Kaelen had not anticipated, stood Isobel. Her expression carried the same resolution, but delivered it differently, the way a warm hand on your shoulder delivers the same message as a sword at your throat, if the message is, pay attention. They went where they went together. They always had. It was, Kaelen had often thought, one of the more reassuring constants in an unreliable world. He crossed the distance and embraced them both. Aylin first, whose return of the gesture lasted approximately the duration of a hiccup and carried the same emotional warmth as a handshake between diplomats. Then Isobel, whose arms lingered, whose hand rested briefly against his shoulder, whose smile arrived with the simple, uncomplicated kindness of a person who is just glad to see you and does not feel the need to make it more complicated than that.
It's good to see you both.
And you, my friend.
Aylin said. Her face had not softened. It was possible that her face had never softened, but the word friend had weight in it, the way a heavy coin has weight, small, significant, and not given out freely.
You look as though you haven't slept.
Isobel said.
I haven't.
Aylin's gaze sharpened, which was remarkable given that it had not previously appeared to have a less sharp setting.
Good. Then you will not mistake what I tell you for comfort.
He opened his mouth to respond, and then the air shifted again, and the shift was entirely different. And it was not celestial, and it was not divine, and it was the sound of a particular footstep he would have known in a crowd of 10,000. Shadowheart entered the room and stopped. It was a very specific kind of stop. The stop of a woman whose composure is a second skin, and who has just encountered, without warning, the daughter of Selûnite and her beloved sitting in her living room. For one unguarded moment, something crossed her face. Surprise, or recognition, or the complicated territory between the two that exists when you walk into a room and find the answer to a question you didn't know had been asked. Then the mask came back, seamless, practiced. the armor of a woman who had spent 40 years in the custody of a goddess who rewarded visible emotion with pain, and who had never quite unlearned the habit of hiding what she felt, even here, even now, even among friends.
Dame Aylin, Isobel.
She said, respect without submission.
Shadowheart.
Isobel crossed the room in 3 strides and embraced her, tight, warm, the kind of hug that communicates not affection, but I have been worrying about you specifically.
It's been too long.
Aylin did not smile. She nodded, which from Aylin was an outpouring.
There are things that do not wait for time.
And then her gaze landed on Shadowheart fully. And it was difficult to say precisely what that gaze did, only that it seemed to reach further than eyes alone should reach, as though the looking itself was a kind of contact, a diagnostic instrument disguised as attention, and Shadowheart's breath snagged like cloth on a nail. The mark on her right palm blazed to life. Not light, the opposite of light. A dark pulse that crawled across her skin with the sick, familiar precision of a thing that never forgets. Delivered with the timing of a goddess who had been listening and wanted it known. Shadowheart's hand clenched. She seized her right wrist with her left, her fingers going white, her jaw locking against the pain for exactly the length of time it took to endure it. 1 moment, but a Shah moment. Which is to say, a moment that contains within it the full memory of every previous moment and the promise of every future one. She straightened, released her hand.
Shall we?
They sat. No refreshments, no preamble. The tea stayed where it was. This was not a tea conversation. Aylin spoke the way she did everything, immediately, directly, and from the front.
There are relics older than the conflict that marked you. Things shaped when Selûne first turned from her sister, when the divide was not yet settled into what it would become. She made them for her followers too.
A pause that was not hesitation but selection, the careful choosing of a word that would bear the exact weight required and not a grain more.
Endure.
Shadowheart's fingers tightened in her lap. She looked at Aylin the way she looked at everything that mattered, with her full and undivided attention, the kind of focus that could strip paint.
And you believe one of these still exists?
Not a question. A weighed object being set down on a table.
I believe it may. I believe it has not been found because those who seek cures do not look for resistance.
Kaelen turned the sentence over in his head. It was, he thought, the most useful thing anyone had said in weeks. The world was full of people chasing the thing that would make the pain stop. Nobody was looking for the thing that would make the pain survivable. The difference was the width of a hair and the distance of a continent. Isobel leaned forward.
This is not something we would suggest lightly. It will not remove the pain you carry, but it may give you distance from it.
Shadowheart's gaze shifted. Not to Aylin, not to Isobel, to Kaelen. And in that look, the particular quality of a woman's eyes when she understands all at once that something has been done behind her back and that the person who did it is sitting 3 feet away with the expression of a man who knows exactly what is about to happen and has decided to meet it head on. Something between them shattered. Not loudly, the way ice cracks, silently, along a line that was always there. She knew. Aylin and Isobel left the way weather leaves, abruptly, totally, leaving behind a room that felt slightly too large for its remaining occupants. The door closed, the candles recovered, the apartment exhaled. Shadowheart was already moving. She walked into the bedroom at a pace that was technically walking in the same way that a cavalry charge is technically horseback riding. Kaelen stood in the sitting room for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to take one breath and to understand that what awaited him through that door was not a conversation, but a tribunal. and followed.
What did you tell them?
She was already facing him, arms crossed, chin up. The architecture already built, the scaffolding removed, the structure standing on its own, a fortress made of fury and one question. He held her gaze.
The truth.
And you decided that was yours to share.
Not a question, a charge. The verbal equivalent of a document being placed before a court.
I decided it was something that needed to be known.
Known.
She repeated the word as though tasting something foul.
You decided that the thing I carry, the thing on my body, in my blood, needed to be known. By people I did not invite, in my own home, without asking whether I wanted them here.
He crossed his arms. This was, in retrospect, the wrong response, meeting a fortification with a fortification. But the part of him that had spent 3 sleepless nights agonizing over a letter he wrote for her benefit was not, at this particular moment, inclined toward de-escalation.
I thought you might want relief,
he said, and heard the shrug in his own voice too late to catch it.
I did not ask for relief.
You did not have to.
5 words. He had meant them as, I love you enough to see what you hide. What they said, what they actually, audibly, irretrievably said was, I know what you need better than you do. And the distance between those 2 sentences was the distance between devotion and arrogance, which, as his mother could have told him, and later would, at considerable length, is shorter than most men believe. Something in her expression shifted, not outward, not dramatically, the way a fault line shifts, invisibly, tectonically, and with consequences that will not be fully understood until the ground opens.
You don't get to decide that. You don't get to look at me and decide what needs to be changed.
I am not trying to change you. He could feel it, the heat climbing beneath his skin, the faint pull along his jaw where something older than argument was responding to the tension, the first traces of scale pressing against his neck and along his cheekbones. The dragon blood had no interest in nuance. It felt intensity, and it answered, and it did not, as a rule, check whether the intensity was love or war before it arrived.
I am trying to give you something that should never have been taken from you.
And I am telling you that it is mine. Mine to bear, mine to accept, mine to refuse to fix if that is what I choose.
He stepped forward.
Jen.
The name fell out of him like a dropped glass. It hung there, wrong, catastrophically wrong, too soft for the fury in the room, too intimate for the war being fought inside it. A name that belonged to mornings and murmured conversations and the specific silence of 2 people breathing together in the dark. Not this. Not a weapon drawn in an argument. Not a key shoved into a lock that was not, at this moment, his to open. Her face changed instantly. Not hurt, not shock. Offense. The particular, annihilating offense of a woman whose most private name has just been deployed as a tool in a fight it was never built to survive. Her eyes went wide and then narrow, and the distance between those 2 states contained, compressed into a fraction of a second, the entirety of a woman's trust being re-evaluated.
Don't.
1 word. It could have cut stone. The room was the same size it had been 30 seconds ago. It was also, suddenly, a continent. She turned, walked to the door. The door closed behind her with a sound that was not a slam. A slam would have been emotional. A slam would have been a continuation of the conversation, but something harder, quieter, more final. A period at the end of a sentence that had no sequel. Kaelen stood in the aftermath, the scales along his jaw receding as the anger drained, leaving behind something colder and worse. The clear, undeniable understanding that he had been wrong. That being wrong for the right reasons was still, inescapably, irreducibly, being wrong. He sat on the bed, then lay back on it, his arm over his eyes, thoughts moving through him without formation or destination, 100 arguments rehearsed and discarded and rehearsed again, and eventually, because the body, unlike the mind, has the good sense to quit when it's losing, sleep took him, and the dreams did not come.